The conference room smelled like burnt coffee and dry erase markers when Director Grant Holloway announced the promotion I had spent 2 years working toward. My chest tightened as he said the name Logan Pierce. The newest analyst on the team. Barely 8 months at the company. The room went completely quiet. Logan looked stunned, his eyes wide like he had just been handed something he never asked for. But Grant clapped him on the back like this was always the plan. Like Logan deserved it. Like the past 2 years of my work meant nothing at all. My spreadsheet was still open on the screen behind them. The same spreadsheet that had doubled our division's revenue last quarter. The same model I built from scratch while everyone else went home at 5 o'clock. Grant met my eyes from across the table. His smile was thin and practiced. "Experience isn't everything, Claire," he said. The humiliation burned through my entire body. My coworkers avoided my gaze. Some stared at their phones. Others shuffled papers they had already read twice. As everyone filtered out of the room, Logan walked past my chair and whispered something that made my stomach drop. I didn't even apply for this. Something about the way Grant quickly shut his laptop told me this decision had nothing to do with experience at all. I waited until the conference room cleared before following Grant to his office. My hands were shaking, but I kept my voice steady when I knocked on his glass door. "Do you have a minute?" He waved me in without looking up from his computer screen. His office was neat and organized, every award perfectly aligned on the shelf behind him. I stood in front of his desk and asked the question burning inside me. "Why Logan?" Grant leaned back in his leather chair and smiled too easily. The kind of smile that hides something underneath. "Claire, you're talented. But you lack leadership presence." I felt my jaw tighten. "What does that even mean?" He shrugged like the answer was obvious. "Logan has a fresh perspective. Sometimes that matters more than years on the job." I wanted to argue, but the look in his eyes told me his mind was already closed. So I turned and walked toward the door. That's when I heard it. Through the glass wall, Grant's voice dropped low as he picked up his phone. He thought I was already gone, but I caught every word. "Yeah, it's done. He's in the role now." I kept walking, but my blood ran cold. The promotion decision was arranged before interviews even started. Back at my desk, I sat down and stared at my computer screen for a long time. My mind kept replaying Grant's words. Fresh perspective. Leadership presence. None of it made sense. I reopened the quarterly analytics dashboard and started scrolling through the numbers. Every major client acquisition in the past year traced directly back to my strategies. The forecasting model that predicted buying patterns. The segmentation analysis that targeted high-value customers. The conversion framework that increased close rates by 32%. All of it was mine. Logan's contributions were minimal at best. He had helped format a few reports I created. He sat in on meetings where I presented findings. But the actual work, the strategy, the results, those belonged to me. I clicked over to the internal documentation for the promotion justification. The report Grant had submitted to leadership explaining why Logan deserved the role. What I saw made my stomach drop. Several of my projects were listed under Logan's name. The forecasting model. The segmentation analysis. Work I had built over months was credited to someone who barely understood what the numbers meant. My hand stopped shaking. Something colder replaced the anger. Grant hadn't just denied me the promotion. He had stolen my work to give it away. Logan approached my desk after hours when most of the office had already gone home. The overhead lights had dimmed to their evening setting, casting long shadows across the empty cubicles. He looked nervous. His hands were stuffed into his pockets, and he wouldn't meet my eyes at first. "Claire, can we talk?" I leaned back in my chair and nodded. Whatever he had to say, I wanted to hear it. Logan pulled up a chair and sat down across from me. He took a deep breath before speaking. Last month, Grant asked me to present one of your reports during a leadership review. He said it was a team presentation. I thought you knew about it. My throat tightened. I didn't know. Logan rubbed the back of his neck. When I gave the presentation, Grant told the executives that I developed the model. He introduced it as my work. I assumed he had cleared it with you first. The pieces started falling into place. Grant had been planning this for months. He didn't just pick Logan at the last minute. He spent weeks reassigning my work to Logan's name before anyone could notice. I didn't ask for any of this, Logan said quietly. I thought I was just helping the team. I looked at him for a long moment. He wasn't the enemy here. He was just another piece Grant had moved across the board. That night, I stayed late at the office and started digging through archived files on the analytics server. Every document I had ever created was saved with timestamps and edit histories. Digital fingerprints that couldn't be erased. I pulled the forecasting model and checked the metadata. Created by Claire Bennett, March 14th. Last modified by Claire Bennett, June 22nd. Every version showed my name as the author. I saved copies to my personal folder and moved on to the next project. The segmentation analysis. The conversion framework. The acquisition strategy deck. Each one showed the same pattern. My work. My timestamps. My name on every original file. I felt a grim satisfaction as I downloaded everything to a secure backup. Grant could claim whatever he wanted in meetings, but the system remembered the truth. The next morning, I arrived early to continue documenting. But when I logged into the shared drive, something was wrong. Several of the files I had accessed the night before were suddenly missing. The folders still existed, but the documents inside were gone. Deleted overnight. My heart started pounding. Grant was already covering his tracks. He knew someone might start looking, and he was destroying evidence before anyone could find it. But he didn't know I had already made copies. I scheduled a meeting with HR Director Melissa Grantley the following afternoon. Her office was on the 4th floor, far from the analytics department. I thought distance might mean objectivity. I was wrong. Melissa listened politely while I explained the situation. I told her about the promotion going to someone less qualified. About my work being credited to Logan. About the files disappearing from the shared drive. She nodded occasionally and typed notes into her laptop. But her expression never changed. When I finished, she folded her hands on the desk and gave me a practiced smile. Claire, I understand your frustration. But promotions are ultimately management discretion. Grant has the authority to make those decisions based on factors we may not fully see. I felt my chest tighten. What factors would justify giving my work to someone else? Melissa's smile stayed perfectly fixed. The executive team already reviewed the numbers supporting Logan's promotion. They were satisfied with the justification. I stared at her. The executives had reviewed numbers. My numbers. Presented under someone else's name. Thank you for bringing this to my attention, Melissa said, standing up to signal the meeting was over. I'll make a note in the file. I walked out of her office knowing exactly what that meant. Nothing would change. The system was designed to protect people like Grant. Late that night, while I was reviewing files at home, an automated email landed in my inbox. The subject line made me sit up straight. Data verification request, Q3 performance metrics. The message was from the Executive Strategy Office. They were conducting a routine audit of departmental performance data and needed verification on several analytics reports submitted over the past quarter. I scrolled down to the signature at the bottom. The request came directly from CEO Adrian Caldwell's analytics team. My heart started racing. Someone at the very top of the company was double-checking our numbers. This wasn't a routine review. This was the CEO's office personally verifying the data that drove our department's results. I pulled up the original files I had backed up and compared them to what had been submitted to leadership. The differences were obvious. Names changed. Credit reassigned. Work that belonged to me presented as if it came from somewhere else. If the CEO's team looked closely enough, they would see the same inconsistencies I had found. For the first time in days, I felt something other than frustration. I felt hope. The next morning, Grant called an emergency team meeting. Everyone gathered in the small conference room near his office, confused about the sudden urgency. Grant stood at the front of the room with his arms crossed. His expression was tight, controlled, but I could see something flickering behind his eyes. Fear. Effective immediately, he announced, all departmental reports are to be routed through me before being sent to the executive dashboard. We've identified a system glitch that's causing data inconsistencies, and I need to personally review everything until IT resolves the issue. Logan sat across from me, his brow furrowed. He leaned over and whispered, "What system glitch?" I haven't heard anything about that. Neither had I. Because there was no glitch. Grant was trying to slow down whatever audit the CEO's office had triggered. He wanted to control what information reached the top before anyone could ask uncomfortable questions. I kept my face neutral while Grant continued his instructions. Don't send reports directly. Don't respond to executive requests without approval. Everything goes through him first. He was building a wall around the department, trying to hide behind it before the truth came out. But the CEO had already started looking. And walls don't stop people who know where to dig. While reviewing old backup files that weekend, I discovered something Grant had never deleted. It was buried 3 folders deep in an archive directory that hadn't been accessed in months. An early draft of the promotion evaluation. My hands trembled as I opened the document. The formatting was different from the final version, rougher around the edges. Grant must have saved it before polishing the report for submission. I scrolled down to the candidate scores. My name was at the top. Every measurable metric showed me leading the rankings. Client acquisition rates. Revenue contribution. Project completion. Leadership assessment scores. I outperformed everyone on the list by significant margins. Logan was near the bottom. His scores reflected his actual experience, 8 months of learning, not leading. Then I opened the final version that Grant had submitted to leadership. My score was dramatically lower. Points had been deducted from categories I knew I had excelled in. Logan's scores had been inflated in areas where he had barely participated. The evaluation had been changed after it was created. Grant had manipulated the numbers to justify a decision he had already made. I saved both versions to my secure backup and documented the differences in a detailed spreadsheet. The evidence was growing. And soon, someone would need to see it. Logan started acting differently after our conversation. He asked more questions in meetings. He reviewed reports more carefully. He began noticing things that didn't add up. One afternoon, he approached Grant's office with a stack of papers. I watched through the glass as he pointed to something on the page, his expression confused. Grant's reaction was immediate. His face tightened, and he leaned forward in his chair with sharp words I couldn't hear through the glass. Logan stepped back, looking startled. He nodded quickly and left the office, still holding the papers. Later that day, he found me in the break room. I asked Grant why I'm credited for the segmentation analysis. Logan said quietly. I told him I didn't build that model. I barely understand how it works. What did he say? Logan shook his head slowly. He told me to focus on the role and stop asking questions. He said I was overthinking things. I watched Logan's face carefully. The confused look had shifted into something more troubled. I think he used me, Logan said after a long pause. I think this whole promotion was never about what I could do. It was about something else entirely. I nodded but didn't say anything. Logan was finally seeing what I had seen all along. A company-wide email arrived on Monday morning from the CEO's office. The subject line was simple and direct. Q3 Performance Review, Mandatory Departmental Assessment. The message explained that CEO Adrian Caldwell had ordered a comprehensive review of every division driving revenue growth this quarter. The audit would examine performance metrics, attribution accuracy, and leadership effectiveness. Our department sat at the very top of the revenue growth list, which meant someone would soon be looking very closely at the data behind our results. The same data Grant had been manipulating for months. Within an hour of the email, Grant called another emergency meeting. His face was pale, and his usual confidence seemed forced. "This review is routine," he said, though his voice wavered slightly. "I'll be handling all communication with the executive team. No one speaks to them directly without my approval. Understood?" Everyone nodded, but the tension in the room was thick. After the meeting, Logan caught my eye across the office. He didn't say anything, but his expression told me he understood what was happening. Grant was scared. And scared people make mistakes. The next morning, Grant made an announcement that surprised everyone. "Logan will present our quarterly numbers directly to the executive board next week." The room went silent. Logan's face went pale. "This is a great opportunity," Grant continued, his tone bright but hollow. "It shows leadership that our new talent is ready for bigger responsibilities." After the meeting, Logan cornered me near the supply closet. His hands were shaking. "Claire, I can't do this presentation. I don't fully understand the analytics model." "You built it." "I just formatted the slides." I studied his face. Grant's plan was becoming obvious. If Logan presented the numbers and struggled, Grant could blame him for any inconsistencies the executives found. Logan would become the scapegoat. "Why do you think Grant picked you for this?" I asked quietly. Logan's expression shifted from panic to realization. The color drained from his face. "He's setting me up," Logan whispered. "If something goes wrong, he'll say I misrepresented the data. He'll blame me for everything." I nodded slowly. "That's exactly what he's doing." Logan stood there for a long moment, processing the betrayal. "Will you help me?" he finally asked. "I need to understand the model before I present it." I hesitated. Then I made a decision that would change everything. For the next 2 nights, Logan and I worked late in the empty office. I walked him through every component of the analytics model I had built. The data sources. The calculation methods. The assumptions behind each projection. Logan took detailed notes and asked questions until he genuinely understood the work. "This is brilliant," he said on the second night, looking at the forecasting framework. I had no idea how sophisticated this system was. I appreciated the acknowledgement, but my mind was focused on something else. If Logan presented the numbers correctly, with full understanding of the methodology, the truth would become obvious to anyone paying attention. The executives would see the depth and complexity of work that couldn't have come from someone with 8 months of experience. When they asked questions, I told Logan, "Answer honestly. Don't guess. If you don't know something, say so." Logan nodded seriously. "What if they ask who built the model?" I met his eyes. "Tell them the truth." He held my gaze for a long moment. I could see him weighing the risks. Grant was still his boss. The CEO would be in the room. His career could go either direction. "Okay," Logan finally said. "I'll tell them the truth." The day before the presentation, Logan sent the final report to Grant for approval. I watched from my desk as Grant opened the file on his computer. His expression changed as he read through the slides. First confusion. Then irritation. Then something colder. Grant called Logan into his office and closed the door. Through the glass, I could see Grant pointing at the screen, his gestures sharp and aggressive. Logan's shoulders stayed straight. He didn't back down. After 15 minutes, Logan emerged from the office looking shaken but determined. He walked directly to my desk. Grant edited the report before forwarding it to the executives, Logan said quietly. What did he change? Logan's jaw tightened. He removed your name from the analytics methodology section entirely. He listed himself as the project supervisor and me as the lead analyst. Your contribution isn't mentioned anywhere. I felt the familiar burn of anger rise in my chest. But underneath it was something else. Certainty. Grant had just made his final mistake. He was so focused on protecting himself that he couldn't see the trap closing around him. Tomorrow, everyone will be watching. The boardroom was packed when Logan walked in for the presentation. I sat in a chair near the back wall, close enough to observe but far from the center of attention. The executive team filled the seats around the long table. CFO Marcus Webb. Chief Strategy Officer Patricia Knight. Regional vice presidents I had only seen in company newsletters. And at the head of the table sat CEO Adrian Caldwell. He was older than I expected, with silver hair and sharp eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. He didn't smile or frown. He simply watched. Logan began his presentation smoothly, walking through the quarterly numbers with the confidence we had practiced. He explained the revenue growth, the client acquisition rates, the forecasting projections. The executives nodded along, occasionally scribbling notes. Then, midway through explaining the revenue surge, CEO Caldwell raised his hand. The room went silent. The predictive acquisition model, Caldwell said slowly. Who designed it? Logan froze. His hand hovered over the slide controls. I could see him processing the question, weighing his options. Grant leaned forward in his chair, ready to intervene. But Logan spoke first. Logan glanced toward me at the back of the room. Our eyes met for just a moment. Then he turned back to face the CEO. Claire Bennett built the entire model, Logan said clearly. She designed the methodology, collected the data, and created every projection you're seeing today. The room went completely silent. Grant's face tightened. His hands gripped the armrests of his chair. I presented this work because I was assigned to, Logan continued. But I want to be clear. The analytical framework that drove these results was developed by Claire. I've spent the last 2 weeks learning how it works so I could present it accurately. CEO Caldwell's expression didn't change. He studied Logan for a long moment, then shifted his gaze to Grant. Grant, the CEO said slowly, your promotion report indicated Logan developed this model. Grant's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Patricia Knight, the chief strategy officer, leaned forward. I reviewed that report myself. Logan was credited as the lead analyst on multiple projects. The tension in the room was suffocating. Every eye moved between Grant, Logan, and me. Grant finally found his voice. There may have been some documentation errors. The team works collaboratively. Credit can be difficult to assign precisely. But his explanation sounded hollow. Everyone could hear it. CEO Caldwell turned his attention to me. Claire, he said, would you mind walking us through the model? I stood slowly and walked to the front of the room. Logan stepped aside, giving me access to the presentation screen. Grant watched me with barely concealed hostility, but he couldn't stop what was happening. I took a deep breath and began explaining. I walked them through the data architecture I had designed. The predictive algorithms that identified high-value acquisition targets. The segmentation framework that increased conversion rates. The quarterly forecasting model that had proven accurate within 3% every single time. The executives leaned forward as I spoke. They asked detailed questions about methodology, sample sizes, and error margins. I answered each one without hesitation. Marcus Webb, the CFO, nodded slowly. This is exceptional work. The statistical rigor here is well above standard. Patricia Knight studied the screen. How long did this take to develop? 14 months, I said. I started the foundational work before Logan joined the company. The room fell silent again. Everyone was doing the math. Logan had been at the company for 8 months. The model had been in development for 14. The timeline made Grant's claims impossible. The CFO pulled up a folder on his tablet and frowned at the screen. I'm looking at the promotion justification report submitted last month, Marcus Webb said slowly. The performance metrics used to evaluate candidates don't match what we're seeing in the actual data. Patricia Knight leaned over to look at his screen. Her expression hardened. The candidate scores in this report show Logan significantly outperforming other analysts, she observed. But the revenue attribution data we just reviewed tells a different story. Grant shifted in his chair. Performance evaluations consider multiple factors beyond raw numbers. Leadership potential, team collaboration, future growth trajectory. CEO Caldwell raised an eyebrow. Those are subjective factors. The numbers in this report are specific, quantifiable, and apparently inaccurate. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. I watched Grant's face as the executive scrutinized his work. The confident mask was cracking. Beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. There may have been calculation errors in the initial report, Grant said quickly. I can review the methodology and submit corrections. That won't be necessary, CEO Caldwell replied calmly. We'll conduct our own review. He turned to his assistant. Please ask IT to pull the original document history for the promotion evaluation file. Grant's face went white. 20 minutes later, the IT director arrived with a laptop. Everyone remained seated as he connected to the conference room display. I pulled the complete revision history for the document in question, the IT director explained. The system logs every change, including who made it and when. CEO Caldwell nodded. Show us. The screen is filled with a detailed timeline of edits. Dates, times, and usernames appeared in a scrolling list. Every modification to the promotion evaluation was documented in perfect detail. The IT director clicked on the first entry. The document was originally created on September 3 at 2:15 in the afternoon. Initial candidate scores were entered at that time. My original scores appeared on screen. I was ranked first in every category. Then the IT director clicked on the second entry. 2 hours later, the document was modified. Multiple candidate scores were changed. The room watched as my numbers dropped dramatically. Logan's numbers rose. The third entry was the final version submitted to leadership. The version with the altered scores. CEO Caldwell's voice was quiet but sharp. Who made those changes? The IT director highlighted the username on the screen. Grant Holloway. The evidence hung in the air like a verdict. Grant sat motionless, staring at the screen that displayed his own actions. Patricia Knight broke the silence. Grant, can you explain why you modified these scores before submitting the evaluation? Grant's mouth opened and closed. No words came out. The original document shows Claire as the top-ranked candidate by every measurable metric, Marcus Webb added. 2 hours later, those scores were completely changed. By you. I watched Grant's face cycle through emotions. Shock. Fear. Then something that looked almost like resignation. CEO Caldwell leaned back in his chair. I think we deserve an explanation, Grant. The silence stretched for nearly 30 seconds. Every executive in the room stared at Grant, waiting. Finally, Grant spoke. His voice was smaller than I had ever heard it. Logan is the nephew of Theodore Pierce. The name hung in the air. Theodore Pierce was one of the company's original investors. A board member with significant influence. I believed promoting Logan would strengthen that relationship, Grant continued weakly. It was a strategic decision for the company's benefit. CEO Caldwell's expression didn't change. You manipulated performance data and stole credit from a qualified employee to impress an investor. Grant said nothing. The room remained absolutely silent. CEO Caldwell turned his attention to Logan. I expected anger or accusation. Logan had benefited from the manipulated promotion, even if he hadn't orchestrated it. But the CEO's expression was thoughtful, not hostile. Logan, he said slowly, you told the truth in this room today when it would have been easier to stay silent. You could have accepted credit for work you didn't do. Instead, you corrected the record. Logan straightened slightly. I didn't want a role I hadn't earned. When I realized what happened, I couldn't pretend otherwise. The CEO nodded. That takes integrity. Especially in a room full of executives who were already convinced you deserved the promotion. Then Caldwell turned to Grant. His expression hardened. You had years of experience with this company. You understood our values and our standards. And you chose to manipulate data, silence a qualified employee, and corrupt the promotion process for personal gain. Grant's face was gray. I was trying to help the company. Theodore Pierce's support is valuable. No investor relationship is worth institutional integrity, Caldwell replied flatly. You didn't help this company. You damaged it. He turned to his assistant. Please escort Grant to HR. The Ethics Committee will begin a formal investigation immediately. Grant stood slowly, his movements mechanical. 2 members of the executive team accompanied him toward the door. His laptop and phone remained on the conference table. As he passed my chair, Grant stopped briefly. His eyes met mine. For a moment, I thought he might say something. An apology. An excuse. Anything. But he just looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Then he walked out of the room. The door closed behind him. CEO Caldwell addressed the remaining executives. We'll need to restructure the analytics department leadership immediately. I want recommendations on my desk by end of day tomorrow. He paused and looked directly at me. Claire, please remain after the meeting. I'd like to speak with you privately. The other executives gathered their materials and filed out of the boardroom. Logan caught my eye as he left. He nodded slightly, a small acknowledgement of everything that had just happened. Then the room was empty except for me and the CEO. Adrian Caldwell walked to the window and looked out at the city skyline. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm but serious. You tried to raise concerns through proper channels. HR dismissed you. Your manager silenced you. The system failed you. I nodded slowly. It did. CEO Caldwell turned away from the window and sat down across from me. Grant's termination will be effective immediately pending the ethics investigation, he said. His access has already been revoked. Security is packing his office as we speak. I absorbed the information silently. After months of watching Grant operate with complete impunity, seeing accountability felt almost surreal. The investigation will likely uncover additional issues, Caldwell continued. Falsified reports. Misattributed work. Possibly other employees affected by similar manipulation. This goes deeper than one promotion. What happens to the department? I asked. Caldwell studied me carefully before answering. That depends on who steps up to lead it. He leaned forward slightly. Claire, your work drove significant revenue growth for this company. Your analytical frameworks are sophisticated and effective. But more importantly, you maintained your integrity when it would have been easier to stay quiet or walk away. I felt my heart rate increase but kept my expression steady. This company needs leaders who build real results based on honest work. Not people who manipulate reports and steal credit. He paused, letting the words settle. I'm offering you the promotion. Not the role Logan received. Something bigger. I want you to lead the entire analytics division. The offer hung in the air between us. Everything I had worked toward for 2 years. Everything Grant had stolen from me. Now it was being offered threefold. The position comes with departmental authority, Caldwell explained. Budget control. Hiring decisions. Direct reporting to the executive team. You would rebuild the division using whatever framework you believe is most effective. I thought about the months of frustration. The deleted files. The edited evaluations. The HR meeting that went nowhere. All the moments when I had questioned whether hard work actually mattered. It mattered. It just took longer than I expected. I'll need autonomy to restructure processes, I said carefully. The current systems made it too easy for someone like Grant to operate without accountability. Caldwell nodded. That's exactly what I want. Build something better. I extended my hand. Then I accept. The CEO shook my hand firmly. Welcome to the executive team, Claire. I look forward to seeing what you build. As I walked out of the boardroom, the weight I had been carrying for months finally lifted. The path forward was clear. The company that had almost destroyed my career was now trusting me to help lead it. A week later, Logan knocked on my office door. He stood in the doorway holding a stack of reports, looking uncertain about whether he was welcome. I waved him inside. I wanted to give you the quarterly projections for next month, he said, setting the papers on my desk. And to tell you something. I leaned back in my chair. Go ahead. Logan took a breath. I decided to stay in the department. Working under you, if you'll have me. I want to actually learn this role instead of pretending I already know it. I studied him for a moment. The nervous analyst who had accepted an unearned promotion was gone. In his place stood someone willing to earn respect the honest way. Everyone starts somewhere, I said. What matters is being willing to learn. Logan nodded gratefully and turned to leave. At the door, he paused. For what it's worth, I'm sorry you had to fight so hard for something you deserved from the beginning. I smiled slightly. It taught me something important. The right people eventually notice the right work. Sometimes it just takes longer than it should. After he left, I reviewed the quarterly numbers he had delivered. The strategy one built was about to push company revenue higher than it had ever been. And this time everyone knew exactly who built it.